All right, welcome to DGB Exotics. This is actually the second time I'm trying to record this, and I have to do it all raw because I don't have my editing software up to date. So, we're going to do this in a straight shot. I only have about 12 minutes of space on my phone left. Yeah, I got to get my life together, but besides the point, I'm Daniel of DGB Exotics. Gabby is not here today. She's out of town, so unfortunately she can't be in this video. But I've been seeing a lot of comments and posts and stuff on social media about modes of inheritance. So, in a broader sense, what I'm talking about is dominant traits, recessive traits, incomplete dominant, codominant, stuff like that. So, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about definitions and how those things are used in the reptile hobby specifically. So, first off, I want to talk about some definitions. Our concept of incomplete dominant and codominant is very similar, but very different at the same time. I'll start with codominance because we do not have codominance in the reptile hobby in the typical sense. So you'll hear a lot of ball python people talking about gene is codominant or something like that. Codominant would be if you took a black cow and a white cow, bred them together, and you got a dairy cow, you know, the black and white cow. I don't know if that's actually how those genetics work in cows specifically, but you get my point. You pollinate a red flower with a white flower, and you get a flower that's both red and white patterned. You get the point. That's codominance. We do not have that in the reptile hobby that I'm aware of, or with any of our commonly kept species. If you breed a albino to a regular, you don't get a patchy colored animal. Now, incomplete dominance is a little trickier. Incomplete dominance is where when you have, let me backtrack a little bit. Okay, so when you breed two animals, you get a copy from each parent of any particular gene. The gene is the DNA coding of how certain traits are expressed in the offspring. So that would be your genotype. Phenotype is how it shows up when you're looking at it as a human. When you're looking at an animal and you see that it's albino, its phenotype is albino. Its gene makeup is its genotype. So when you breed two animals together, they each pass on a copy of the genetics they have in their background. So every animal has two copies. Let's say normal and albino. If you have a normal and you breed it to an albino, the normal parent's going to pass on either one of its normal or albino traits, and then the albino is only going to be able to pass on albino. So I'll explain that later. So when you say one copy or two copy, it's like it gets really complicated. I'm getting off topic. Let's get back to the definitions. So back to incomplete dominance was where I was at. Incomplete dominance is where when you inherit one normal copy and one mutated copy of the gene in the genotype, the phenotype is somewhere in between the normal version and the fully homozygous two copies of the gene version. So let's use palmetto as an example. Palmetto is a great example because it is a incomplete dominant gene. This is your palmetto corn snake. It is a leucistic type mutation, which has white with a little bit of flecks of color. Now we're short on time, so I'm going to try to move quickly here. We have Heartbreaker here, who is a normal, so he does not carry any copies of the palmetto gene. So you see he has nice thick black borders. His belly checkers are nice and black. He's got normal bright colors. And now for an animal that is het for palmetto, which again, incomplete dominant trait, so we can get back to terminology. But this animal only has one copy of palmetto, and so it shows that partially. He has a lighter color. The colors are not as intense. The belly checkers are not as big, bold, and black. And the saddles are going to have thinner borders. Now, this generally goes for most palmettos. Certain other mutations mixed in can mess this up. It's not always going to be 100% consistent, but when you're talking about palmetto and incomplete dominant genes by themselves, this is generally what you're referring to. There are exceptions to every rule. Now, let's move on, before I run out of time, let's move on to dominant and recessive. When we're talking about dominant traits and recessive traits, we're talking about them in reference to the normal mutation. So, You saw Heartbreaker. He's a normal. Let's talk about Tessera. I'm going to bring out Meraxes here. Meraxes is a Tessera. Now, my understanding is that she is a heterozygous Tessera, which in this case, heterozygous just means that she only has one copy of the gene. Now, one copy of normal for most animals means that they're going to look normal, but they carry the gene, they carry the genetics to make the mutation in the offspring. But Tessera is dominant over the normal color. So, even though she shows the dominant Tessera gene, she is also het for the normal pattern. I hope that makes sense. Now, it's unusual to find a dominant gene in a corn snake, for example. Buff is another example, but I don't have any buff that I know of, so I can't really use that example. Now, dominant is generally in reference to the normal type of the genetics. So you have your normal corn snake like Heartbreaker, and then Tessera is dominant to that, which means when you breed Meraxes with the Tessera to Heartbreaker, which was the normal pattern one, because she only carries one copy of the dominant gene, half the babies should be, each baby has a 50% chance of being Tessera or a 50% chance of being normal. Now, that leads us to recessive. When we're looking at recessive genes, recessive in relation to the wild type look. So, albino, amelanistic is a perfect example. Let's bring out Songbird. She is a red zeppelin, which is a locality albino. So, Songbird is a beautiful example of an albino or amelanistic. She is actually a red zeppelin, which is a locality morph of amel. So, if I bred her to Heartbreaker, if Heartbreaker is homozygous for the normal color mutation, then all the babies from that pairing would look normal, but carry one copy of the albino gene. Being recessive, they would not show it, but it is in their genetics to create albinos in their offspring. Now, let's skip a generation and say we're breeding a normal het albino to an albino. My recommendation, if you don't understand the inheritance of this, is look up what a Punnett square is. Do your research on that. I don't have time to explain it in this video, unfortunately. So, a normal het albino to an albino, each baby has a 50% chance of inheriting one copy of normal and one copy of albino, or one copy of albino from each parent. And that way, you can predict most of the babies are going to be either normal looking phenotypically or albino looking phenotypically. Those normals, their genotype would be one copy of normal, one copy of albino. Their phenotype would be normal. I hope that explains everything well. If you have any questions, please mark them in the comments or send me a message on any of my platforms, DGB Exotics on Facebook and Instagram, Morph Market 2. That's going to be it for today. I hope this wasn't too long. I hope it didn't cut off. And I hope you all have fun keeping your corn snakes. And see you on the next one. Thank you.